We just got through circling about our first in-school suspension, and I knew that some of you were going to claim that you had never received the in-school suspension, so I allowed you to draw upon the experience of when you assigned your first in-school suspension as an administrator, or when you were a teacher and you gave a student a referral and they received the in-school suspension. I wanted you to think back to those experiences, and I wanted you to think about a few things. The first thing I wanted you to think about is, why were you or that student assigned an in-school suspension? The second thing I wanted you to think about was, what did that in-school suspension look like? What was the setting? And lastly, what was the outcome? Did your behavior or the student's behavior change? And was it a direct result of what took place in the in-school suspension? One thing I want to be very clear about is I am not against in-school suspension. I think in-school suspension is necessary at times. There are times we're going to have to be able to remove students from the learning environment. Not just because we need a break, but also because they are compromising the integrity of the learning environment, and in some cases they're jeopardizing the safety of others in the learning environment. The issue I have is not in-school suspension. The issue I have is, what are we doing when the students are in the in-school suspension? That part I have a big problem with. Right now, in most cases, this is what's happening when students are sent to ISS. Students are being removed from the learning environment to go do busy work. Now, I could see if the busy work they were doing was actually beneficial to keeping them on track and helping them learn, but let's be honest, it's just busy work. We've all been there. Whenever they say, Johnny's been sent to ISS, what do? We go over, we scramble and get some stuff together. We grab all the worksheets that we have. We grab a textbook and we go from page 525 to 572 and we say he needs to go and do all this. That is not beneficial to Johnny. Like, Johnny is just doing busy work. So what that's making Johnny do is hate doing work. That's really all it's doing. He's not learning about his behavior. He just hates doing work. Now, one thing that is happening sometimes in some cases is the students are getting in there and they're getting used to being in that kind of structured environment. The irony is, some of our students with the most disruptive behavior actually thrive better in that type of setting. So sometimes it turns out not to be a punishment because they'd rather be in that setting, because that's a setting where they're not being held academically accountable. All you do is the busy work, and then nobody holds you accountable for whether or not you can or can't read. Nobody holds you accountable whether or not you can solve that problem, because ultimately you're in isolation. You're actually having a chance to, for lack of better words, meditate. When I was an assistant principal, the way the district had it set up, we didn't have ISS on the elementary campus. There were about 4 different campuses throughout the district that students would go to when they were assigned ISS. The school for the ISS placement for the students from my campus was about 10 or 15 minutes away. The parents were responsible for getting their child to ISS and from ISS. One could definitely argue that the ISS placement was not a punishment for the child, but it definitely was holding the parents accountable, because they were responsible for the transportation to and from ISS of their child for their behavior. I always saw this as a good thing because it was leverage for me when I was trying to work with parents. There was very little pushback when I was really trying to work with the parents to change the students' behavior when they were on my campus. In fact, in a lot of cases, they were like, you know what, you've done all you can do. Let's go ahead and send them to ISS. That's where the problem was right there. The ISS on the off-site location was not structured in a way to change the student's behavior. The ISS was structured just like this. Now, don't get me wrong. The ISS teacher might have them write an apology. The ISS teacher might talk to them about their behavior, but there was no real true intervention going on when they were in that setting. Not the intervention that was necessary to change their behavior. ISS should be an option on the table if we're doing ISS correctly. There is no point for a student to go to ISS and just do busy work. That doesn't make any sense. That's not beneficial to the student, and that's not beneficial to us. So what we need to focus on, and what we're about to focus on in a few, is how do we make ISS meaningful, where it holds students accountable and works towards changing their behavior so they don't end back up in ISS.